With the future of Giannis Antetokounmpo in question, plus salary cap restraints, how should the Bucks attack the offseason? We'll talk about that on today's episode of Locked on Bucks.
You are Locked on Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What it do? Welcome to Locked on Bucks, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Camille Davis, an NBA analyst with the Locked on Network and co-host of the Technical File podcast, joined by Justin Garcia, voice of the Bucks Radio Network, and Frank Madden, a longtime voice of the pod, founder of brewhoop.com. And we continue the conversation that was happening earlier on in the week. On Monday and our Tuesday show, our Wednesday show was myself and Justin really taking a look at the Giannis rumors, the draft lottery, and how all of that stands. Today, we have a focus on the offseason, but we also do appreciate you for tuning in and making Locked on Bucks your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube. As mentioned, today's episode is going to continue the conversation that myself and Justin and Frank have been having throughout this week, with the specific focus in today's episode on the offseason and how the Bucks should approach it.
I think so here's my offseason plan for the Bucks. So as you guys have pointed out, right, very unique in the sense that a couple of big things at play. I know, Justin, you brought it up. Obviously, trading Khris Middleton for Kyle Kuzma, it does, you effectively have taken a $10 million chunk off of your prior kind of payroll. The other big thing is just because of the new TV deal, like the cap is going to be going up the 10% max every summer. So it's very predictable what the salary cap and the luxury tax and all the aprons are going to be like for the next few years.
I mean, yeah, they're screwed. As much as it didn't work out on the court, they are screwed if they don't make that trade. Mm-hmm. Because then if you're Giannis, you're looking at, so there's literally nothing we can do in terms of picks being frozen, and we're just down to the veteran minimum once again.
And the picks being frozen thing, like, to me, that's kind of
it's one pick that's far down the road.
And like,
and you
the
can
reality
unfreeze.
Is right. And like, if 2032 is frozen, the thing you would trade is 2031. And if you trade 2031, you can't trade 2032 anyway.
You could include it as a swap.
It can't be swapped. But I mean, at this point, obviously, like, are they really going to trade that pick anyway? Like, at this point, like, isn't even really on my radar, just because, like, we're all going to be dead by then anyway. But maybe that's the reason that's the reason to trade it, is because, like, 2031, like, like, who knows?
They're going to be here, literally.
Where will the universe be in 2031 anyway? But I mean, like, I think the plan is, and let me start by laying out kind of the, like, I hesitate to call it the run it back scenario, but it is sort of just like basically, even though you have a lot more flexibility to use like the non-tax mid-level, you do not have cap space, right? Like, I mean, that's like the main thing that you need to kind of just take into account, like, coming into this offseason, right? Just the massive amount of money. It's what, 130 million or so that you have tied up in your top three contracts, Damian, Giannis, and Kyle Kuzma. You can look at the cap and say, like, oh, well, the salary cap is 154, 155. So that's like 24, 25 million. But you haven't accounted for roster holds, cap holds, all these other things. So really, like, the thing you always compare it against is the non-tax mid-level, which is that $14.1 million number. When you kind of do the math, like, you're better off just basically operating essentially like around above the tax or above the cap, and just using the non-tax mid-level, potentially also the biannual, with the key caveat being that if you spend more than the taxpayer mid-level, so if you spend, $7 million on a free agent using half of the mid-level, then you are hard capping yourself at the first apron. If you use the biannual exception, you're hard capping yourself at the first apron. But I don't think that's a bad thing this summer. Like, you kind of have to do that if you want to maximize your talent. And the first apron is, this year, $196 million almost. Mm-hmm. So it's like very high actually relative to, kind of the rest of the kind of money that you have tied up. So to me, the logic is, okay, as you guys have talked about, I think you're trying to take KPJ and Gary Trent and try to keep those guys. You've got the non-tax mid-level and the biannual that you can use for that, right? So I've sort of been placeholdering, like, maybe it's $9 million, maybe it's $10 million a year for Gary Trent as a starting salary. That's probably like as high as I would say is like probably reasonable to go. And again, like our team's banging down his door to give him a full mid-level. I don't really see it. His age is in his favor, right? At 26 years old.
Yeah.
But I think most likely like, a 2+1 type deal or something like that for $9 million starting. Like I would think him being promised the starting shooting guard position probably, is good enough there. I thought, Justin, I know you pointed out like, hey, Dame recruited him. So obviously he's not playing with Dame next year, but obviously he's still going to be around the team. So that's kind of like step one. And then again, you'd have $5 million of your mid-level exception left. You could use that to bring back KPJ. That's probably around the taxpayer mid-level. And I just cannot imagine anybody offering him more than that, just given his history and the consistency questions. And, it's like, again, it's like nobody's going to give KPJ a starting
$20 million in your starting.
Well, even like 10 million. Like, is somebody give him 10 million a year and or offer him a chance to be a starting guard? Like, I think the Bucks are very uniquely positioned to. I mean, he's going to be a starting point guard if he wants. They can make him a starting point guard next year. So to me, like, there's an obvious like make good type thing here, where even if he opts out of that player option next year, he can come back, give him a $5 million plus a player option, something like that, right?
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's the end all be all, but there's been a relationship there with KPJ too, dating back to a year ago, where the Bucks were pretty convinced he was going to sign with them for the minimum before ultimately going to the Clippers. So he's somebody they've been recruiting for some time, and he spoke very highly, and the players, his teammates as well, of their experience with him.
Yeah. So look, I mean, if somebody for some reason offered him like $7 million a year and the Bucks couldn't do that, like I'd probably say if I'm his agent, like I'll take that money, even if it's a less, enticing role.
Yeah.
But I just think that's probably not likely. So KPJ's back, Gary Trent's back. That's probably your starting backcourt, I guess. As of now, I think Ryan Rollins is the other guy. I sort of have him penciled in at $4 million starting salary. As you guys pointed out as well, like teams are not going to like target somebody like Ryan Rollins with like a huge, $8 million a year restricted free agent offer in all likelihood. So can you get him on, a 2 or 3 year deal at $4 million a year? Like, I think that's probably pretty reasonable. And I think he'd be really good value at that price. So you got him, locked in somewhere in that ballpark. I think then the other thing, so Thanasis is at the minimum.
Pencil it in.
Pencil it in. I think the interesting thing and where the real like decisions come into play are with the big guys, right? And I mean, like everybody, of course, wants to say like let Brook Lopez walk and something profit. I would try to keep Brook if it's like $8 million a year or something like that. That's what I penciled him in at. I have no idea. He may be able to get more than that from I don't know who. Maybe he can get more than that. He feels like probably more of like a taxpayer mid-level guy. I don't think he's going to want to go to a bad team
for a lot of money.
And again, like why would a bad team give him a lot of money? I don't know. But a team like Golden State or the Lakers, even like maybe they could throw him like a taxpayer mid-level type of deal. So I would try to keep him. And honestly, part of the rationale is going to be
a tradable contract.
Exactly. Keep that salary slot. If you're trying to appease Giannis, you're not going to find like a better offensive, defensive, like regular season.
You're not going to find a center on this market, period.
Yeah, exactly. Like go look at free agent centers. I mean, it's like you very quickly are like, if you
can't afford Miles Turner.
Well, you basically probably have, if you're using KPJ like and Gary Trent splitting the mid-level, then you've got probably the biannual exception about like a little over 5 is the number that you could use to get a center. And so Luke Cornett.
Well, maybe Frank too.
Frank Cornett you could probably get for the minimum because he's like.
Could I interest you in Jackson Hayes or Larry Nance?
Exactly.
Precious Achua.
So I think that's sort of what I would. Yeah, I would say just like keep Brook. Like keep the goodwill. Like he plays well with Giannis. And the durability factor, because honestly, that's what you're building. You're building a regular season team, guys. Like, I mean, I love the idea that you could build some frisky young team that can be annoying and maybe make it to the second round. But like
this year's Clippers that maybe wins in the first round.
Yeah, but like I think probably like that's probably not like your destiny. But I think the flip side is like Jericho Sims. Obviously, you have bird rights on him. You can bring him back. Again, is he going to make much more than the minimum? I mean, he can't catch a basketball, so like I think he fits nicely as like a moderate minute, guy on the
Change of
Bucks.
pace guy.
Change of pace guy on
Yeah.
the Bucks. And I think the argument would be like, I mean, we saw it in the first round. I was very surprised that Jericho Sims played, like all three of the big guys played next to Giannis in that first round series. I was like, oh, credit to you, Doc. You're playing Jericho Sims in game 1 of the playoffs after he's been out, and you have Brook and Bobby available to him. So I think that's probably the play here is like, you can't play Brook 30 plus minutes per game, every game. So try to like finally ramp his minutes down a bit, preserve him a little bit, and see if like Sims or another young guy, right? I mean, like, if you don't
also maybe not play him high 70s in games.
You could do that too. But I mean, like the other types of guys you're talking about, right, is like Luke Cornett or like Paul Reed, who like has like as I was looking at his stats, like Paul Reed has like barely played like in the NBA. Like he has never played a lot of minutes, but has been statistically like reasonably efficient. And is more of like obviously a mobile, probably more of a 4 than a 5. But
well, the one that everybody's going to clamor for after the first round is Steven Adams is a free agent.
And Steven Adams is like the anti-Brook in the sense that he's never healthy, right? Like
also can't shoot
and can't shoot, but is a lovely dude. And honestly, if you told me I had to hang out with an NBA player for a day, Brook and Steven Adams would be like near the top of my list. Like let's go to Disney with the Lopez twins and Steven Adams. Like I'm sure that would be a blast.
The days are getting longer, the weather is warming up, and people are spending more time outside, which means it is the perfect time to refresh your outdoor space. Whether you're working with a big backyard or a small balcony, Wayfair has everything you need to make it feel more like you. Mayfair's massive selection of outdoor essentials makes it easy to transform any space into your idea's summer setup. From comfy conversation sets to sleek dining tables and outdoor decor, they got it all at the prices that fit your budget. And I know for me, that budget piece is a big part because I don't play about my money, y'all. I need to make sure the price is right. You can grab a patio dining set and some string lights from Wayfair to help extend your outdoor space. Personally, I love how many different styles they offer and the fact that delivery is free and hassle-free, even for all that big stuff that you might order. So whether you're entertaining guests or you're relaxing solo, make sure you shop at Wayfair to help you unwind. Shop a huge selection, and I do mean huge selection, of outdoor furniture online. This summer, get outside with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home.
So yeah, I would just say like bring Brook back, keep that salary slot. It's going to be a max 2-year deal that you can probably trade if you need to later. And then similarly, like I think you should try to bring Bobby Portis back.
Yeah.
And I've always sort of struggled with like how much does he affect winning at the highest level? Well, guess what? You're not trying to win at the highest level right now. You're trying to win regular season games and maybe surprise someone in the first round of the playoffs. And you know what? Like Bobby, like guys that can like do what he does in terms of scoring and floor stretching with Giannis
have value, and it's a movable asset.
Yeah, and like I thought Bobby's defense this year was like less obviously an issue than it was in prior years.
It was improved.
And Bobby and Giannis lineups actually worked well. So he's probably his player options 13.4. I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. I don't know that he would opt in. I think like if you offer him basically like we'll just give you that plus like another year or something like that, I'd be fine with that, to be honest. Like just extend the stay, keep the mayor here. And then the bottom line, like the big thing that to make all this possible, to stay under the tax, you could do all this and stay under the first apron, but to stay under the tax, which I expect would be a priority if they could do it.
Yeah.
The variable to stay under doing all this, you're going to be up close to the first apron with all this. But if you were to stretch Pat Connaughton's last year, you take that $9 million, you spread it over 3 years instead of just one, that would get you under the first apron, under the tax in terms of kind of where you'd be, moving forward. And honestly, like, I would kind of get it if that's finally, the ownership group saying like, all right, guys, like we spent the nose for 3 years. We didn't get anything this year. We're going to spend money. We're not, we can't use cap space, but we will, take Pat Connaughton, and as good as a guy he's been for the franchise, he would be kind of the victim here to be able to, again, kind of get back under the tax for the first time since before the championship.
This year we're getting that $60 million distribution. is the Camille, anything to add to that? And I'll say this too for both you guys.
Chris Livingston is waived. I'm sorry, Justin, but that's big. As I said in the other podcast, the Nasus needs a roster spot. Sorry, guys.
I like dating back to earlier in the season, I kind of assumed Bobby was going to opt out because you just figured, well, to your point, Frank, of like offensively what he brings, even if there's defensive questions, there's value there. And I think there's more money out there on the market for him. But that and what we started to talk about too with guys like Gary Trent and Kevin Porter Jr., when you look at teams with cap space, which is 5-6 teams this summer. And then you look at teams that have the full mid-level available. I think it's 14. So half the league we're talking about. And when you start to line up the guys that are free agents this summer that you would look at and say, well, I could see him getting all of it, or at least a big chunk of it. There's a lot of guys that are coming in higher in the pecking order than the likes of certainly Gary Trent Jr. and Kevin Porter Jr. and to a lesser extent, Bobby Portis, that this oddly may be something of like, well, the way that everything is kind of leveled out and, the middle class is basically dead now. Well, that's oddly one of the things that's going to benefit you in a time like this.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I'll add to that as we get ready to wrap is just, I agree with the notion of Frank's offseason plan of some of the guys to target, who to bring back. And I think it adds, again, what we kind of started mentioning last year with the CBA, which is internal improvement is going to drive a lot for a lot of teams as well. So like if the Bucks can get more out of AJ Green, out of Ryan Rollins, if he's back, out of Andre Jackson Jr., who is one of the players where you're going to have a really big summer of development ahead of you, because if you can add some things to your game with some of the defensive skill sets you have, it can be really important for this team. Chris Livingston, we'll see what happens with him. He could be around as a trade chip going forward, because I think his contract's like $2 million.
It's non-guaranteed, isn't it?
Oh yeah, if they guarantee it, it would be
nobody's trading for Chris Livingston. I think they tried to trade him the first summer he was here when they were trying to get campaign and nobody wanted him.
It didn't work out that way.
Yeah, I mean, granted, he wasn't to your point, Camille, he would be an expiring contract at least, which he also was this year. But I mean, the bottom line is like an expiring minimum is like. Yeah, like it just isn't worth anything. Like, it's just like.
Oh, I got you Kevin Porter Jr.
Well, yeah, that's actually fair enough.
Jericho Sampson got you.
If you can take somebody else's toxic, guy, the toxic upside play.
And that might be what we see more often too. It's just teams trying to just trade.
What's Josh Primo doing these days? Like guys who've been like run out of the league. Like that's Jimmy Haslam's bag, right? So we'll hold our nose.
I have no comment on any of that.
I know. So
that's Locked On Bucks for the day. Like, no, I'm joking.
That's non-affiliated Frank Madden throwing all these ideas out, but yeah, I don't know. And I mean, I know it's crazy. It's like, people are going to be like, you're running it back for the team that was so disappointing. It's like, yeah, guys,
run it back with the pieces that show something.
I mean, there certainly is discussion around are there trades you can make? But honestly, the problem is so many of these guys that you would potentially use in trades, they need to be re-signed first. So honestly, I think you kind of are running it back to see what the heck you have. And then trade deadline, you see where you are, right? I mean, who knows? If it's a disaster, if Giannis came back, but then he was unhappy. I mean, who knows, right? Exactly. It's all anything could happen at that point. But yeah, I mean, when you're kind of great ideas to try something new is Paul Reed. It's yeah, okay, guys. I'm if anybody has brighter ideas, I'm all for it. And
Eric Gordon.
Eric Gordon is the guy from 2008. We always wanted him on the Bucks. But that's the thing too here is, I mean, the kind of big question to me is just is there any scenario where they would actually put the 2031 first round pick into play? I just am assuming they won't, because at this point, I mean, Justin, you're talking about trying to, if you traded Giannis, try to get back some of those picks you sent out. Right. Are you going to ship more of those picks out as sort of just absolute desperation, whatever? I just at this point
pull a Phoenix and turn $1 into 3/4, and then all of a sudden pivot and say, well, maybe we should rebuild.
Well, Justin, I forget if we've talked about it in the DMs, but the last stage of desperation for an NBA franchise of trying to hold on is you take that Brad Beal contract. So I mean, that to me is like that's the real like stare at yourself in the mirror and start to cry in the RB's bathroom, is if you're trying to if you're trading like Dame and something for Brad Beal just to like have one last chance at giving Giannis somebody who's ambulatory to play with in 25, 26.
Why did you even speak that into existence?
I mean, would like what would you have to give with Dame Lillard's contract?
Nothing.
To take on
Brad
Beal.
That's it.
I don't know.
Let's take it or leave it.
Like maybe the Suns would just like give you Brad Beal for Damian Lillard in a wheelchair. Like I don't know. I'm not endorsing that, by the way. I'm just saying like that's sort of like that is the like seventh ring of hell that we're in right now as Bucks fans, is that like we're talking about like would they try to trade for Brad Beal, who I believe Giannis has had some affinity for at various points of his career, which we can put that into the whole like Giannis has too much power or whatever, but fine. And for the record, like I think it's obvious, like I will go down with the ship with Giannis. Giannis is a franchise legend. I will happily take years of mediocrity here as he rides into the sunset, rather than try to spin him for nice players and picks who maybe could get you to a decent place in a couple of years. If he asks out, then I will, I've got thoughts on the Rockets and, pretty much only the Rockets, but my wife is a Rockets fan, by the way. So, that's
in case folks didn't know.
It would work out like, not ideal, but at least that would keep it somewhat in the family if Giannis were to leave.
That's where I've been, and I think Camille, you said the same thing too. Of I'm in no hurry to trade Giannis. Nope. If he asks for it and says I don't see a window to compete here, I would like to do that. Yeah, you owe that to them then. Of thank you for everything you did here to basically keep the franchise in Milwaukee, to build Fiserv Forum, to bring a championship, to make the Bucks relevant. We will appease you there, but other than that, no. And I don't get any sense that the organization has viewed that either. Of like, well, maybe we should recoup some picks and move on from him, because I think they recognize it too. That no, like, do you remember what it was like before
I do.
Giannis was here? Do you remember how easy it was to find tickets at the Bradley Center?
The Bane quote from Batman. Some people only he merely adopted the dark. I was born in it. This is we're 90s Bucks fans, right? Like Camille, you're obviously younger than Justin and I, but like we know what that looks like.
It's cute that you can look back and say like, oh, Brad Lohaus, I remember him, or Marty Conlon, that was a cool looking shot. But like, no, some of us really remember everybody else, and the Ken Normans that were on here, and pinning your hopes to those types of guys to go into the Bradley Center to just watch the other teams that were coming into Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm. That was an experience right there. Like, who are the Bucks playing? Like, they were giving away Bucks tickets at points where like you couldn't. We don't have to begrudge this point at this point, because I'm not trying to be depressed as we go back and think of some of those days.
Well, I mean, you already put Bradley Beal out there.
I know, right? We gotta end this now.
Go straight. We have each other.
Like it's aggregated.
That's the important thing is, guys, we have the three of us. We have each other. Bucks fans, our audience, we have each other.
Yeah.
We have a 2021 championship. I don't know. That was my philosophical thing. Like really the last couple of years really is just honestly, it just when things get very bad, depressing, whatever, I just think,
like,
man,
hey, at least 2021
we got to, I got to go to see Giannis score 50 points to win an NBA championship game. Like, am I really going to complain that much? Like, I'll complain a little bit, but like I'm going to die happy. Like I don't, as a Bucks fan, like I'll die happy in 2030 when the world ends. Before that, before all those picks are done conveying, I'm going to die happy. That's fine. I don't know why the world will end, but Bucks.
I got some thoughts.
I got
thoughts. So what? Hoops Hype and Real GM tomorrow. Bucks considering a trade for Bradley.
Right.
We expect to see that on there. I did mention we tabulated the standings, and who won in our over-under draft that we did right before the season started.
Did anyone win, or did we just all like lose in the grand scheme of the universe?
Well, all right. So we can get into it in detail at some point later on in the offseason, but Camille won. Camille was the only one of us who actually scored in the positive. You and I were both negative. Frank, I was a negative 14. You were a negative 18. Camille was plus 16.
This was wins relative to the over-unders, right?
So this was the over-under, and then what they actually won. And I had the distinction of having the team that overachieved the most in the Pistons, who were plus 18.5, and the team that underachieved the most in the Sixers, who were minus 28.5. But
Spurs, the Spurs screwed me. The Spurs just really screwed me. Didn't I pick like everybody but the Bucks in the East? Like all the
you had the Cavs, the Magic, the Pacers, the Knicks, the Celtics. So you had the Eastern Conference well represented.
Who screwed me over here, Justin? What killed me? Was it the Spurs?
You had the Jazz, you had the Suns.
Oh yeah, I had too much.
It was really those two.
Okay.
Yeah, Spurs were only minus 2.5. Camille only had a couple teams, but she had that underachieved. But she had quite a bit of overachieve. She had the Clippers. She had both LA teams. The Bulls were plus 11.5 somehow. So.
Camille, didn't you pick like the Hornets first or something like that?
Yeah, I was picking teams I thought wouldn't win that many games.
Where did they finish?
They were 29.5 over under. They finished with 19 wins.
I was going to say, Camille, when you picked them, I was like, I don't like Camille's strategy. I feel good. And then you won anay, Camille. So it just goes to show. Our first picks were all garbage. It just ended up like
my first two picks. So the first picks, yours was the Spurs, then the Cavs. Camille had the Hornets and Warriors. I had the Grizzlies and Sixers for my first two picks. So a minus 28 on those two.
All right, Camille, I owe you a slice of Rockies.
That's what I'm talking about on a Friday. So I get the Superoni to be particular.
That's my weapon of choice as well. So
that's
all right. We ended on Rockies, so all is right in the world.
All right, that will do it for today's show. For Camille and Frank, I'm Justin. We will talk with you guys once again tomorrow on Locked On Bucks.